So in the next 20 or so minutes, I will introduce my chapter in the handbook, the soft power of international education theoretical framework. So we all know that international education is an important economic sector nowadays. And according to the statistics released by UNESCO last year, so there were about 6 million international students worldwide until 2022, and almost tripling since the year 2000. And also it is expected, the number is expected to reach 8 million by 2035, according to UNESCO. I think this means a lot for people to understand the mobility and the mobility of the personnel across the world, and in speaking of soft power. And there are many scholars that have discussed the topic of soft power and international education. Firstly, like Joseph Nye himself, and he speaks highly about American higher education in producing the significant soft power for the United States. So in an article entitled Soft Power and Higher Education, Nye says, so colleges and universities can help raise the level of discussion and advance American foreign policy by cultivating a better understanding of power and how the world has changed in important ways over the last 20 to 30 years. He continues, we can work to instill in our students and in the broad public a better appreciation of both the realities of our interconnected global society and the conceptual framework that must be understood to successfully navigate the new landscape we face. So in the same article, he says the comments from the former US Secretary of State, Colin Powell. So in the public speech, Powell says international students return home with an increased understanding and often a lasting affection for the United States. So I can think of no more valuable asset to our country than the friendship of the future world leaders who have been educated in the United States. So this statement highlights the importance of the international education and its impact on soft power. Of course, this is from the aspects of the United States. So after reviewing the previous literature on international education and soft power, and so we can see that the discussions by scholars about the role of international education usually fall into three categories in relation to soft power. So firstly, international education as an instrument. So Nye and Powell's comment apparently view international education as an instrument for achieving the foreign policy gains for the United States. And secondly, the international education is viewed as a source of attraction of countries. And so the universities are supposed to nurture attractive ideal values, which can be associated with the attractiveness of a country and its culture, and contribute to its attraction-based soft power. And the third category is viewing international education as a venue or platform where people can facilitate the exchange of ideas and the transition of values and experience of cultures and customs of the society. But of course, so this kind of discussion or research has its limitation, as with the soft power, the theory of soft power itself, so there seems to be the limitation in the theorization of the soft power of international education. So firstly, it is when people, we can see that in the previous introduction of the previous works, we can see that most discussions about the soft power of international education is more descriptive, like the rigid theoretical conceptualization. And secondly, so the existing research focuses mostly on the state-initiated programs. For example, so when people talk about international education and soft power in the US, it is mostly talking about the Fulbright programs by the United States, or when we talk about soft power of education in Australia, and we talked about the new column plans, and in other countries, there are numerous kind of the scholarships and the state-initiated programs to promote the international exchange of the personality. But nowadays, the realities has been changed a lot. So while the international education is regarded more as a business, providing service for the middle class and the families. And so we need to examine it more from the perspective of cultural relations than from the perspective of the strategic communication started or initiated by the states. So with this limitation as the departure point, in this chapter, I tried to develop a new framework analyzing the soft power of international education, drawing on the existing conceptualization by other scholars. So firstly, of course, is drawing on the nice soft power resources, the political values, cultural political values, and foreign policies. And secondly, it is drawn on the Professor Chitty's conceptualization and the virtue and virtuosity. And I know that many of the colleagues have talked about how to use this model before. So briefly, so virtue refers to the humanist ideational, behavior, and material outputs of individual or collective actors that can result in attraction-based influence. And virtuosity refers to the excellent skills or the craftsmanship that create the ideational behavior and the material outputs to generate the attraction-based influence. And so another foundation for this framework is the experiential approach of the soft power, again developed by Professor Chitty. And so he has discussed this in detail earlier. But so when I look at the international education using this framework, and I look at the soft power of international education through the recipient's perspective and see how soft power is engendered through the experience of key stakeholders. So in the case of international education, so the key stakeholder refers to the international students. So I look at it through the perspective of international students, through the kind of ethnographic experience of myself as a former international student, and also now as an academic working in the industry in Australia. So to understand the experience of international students and so how attraction can be generated in their minds through their experiences, we need to understand why international students choose to study overseas. So here, according to the observations on international students, of course, my observations is mainly on the international students from China, from some Asian countries. So briefly speaking, so the reasons for the international education choosing to study overseas could be summarized as the following. So firstly, they try to learn the advanced knowledge and the academic practice from the developed countries, from the West. And secondly, the studying abroad, this kind of experience can equip them with some soft skills, such as the critical thinking and language skills and a broader vision that can help them to gain the comparative edge in the job market after returning home. So to integrate these expectations from the international students with the virtue and virtuosities of the universities and the host countries, so we can understand or analyze the elements of the soft power in international education, as shown in this table. So for virtues, we can see the cultural values or the social values transformation, and also the academic knowledge. So this value transmission or the knowledge delivery requires the capacity of the university to teach the values or to provide the opportunities for the students to get engaged with the local cultures and for the academic knowledge. So it can refer to the capacity to prepare students for their careers in the future. So when we talk about virtuosity in the context of international education, so we talked about the teaching skills, the research capacities, and also most importantly nowadays, the corporate operational skills or the corporate professional skills. So here I want to highlight the one element here is the corporate operational skills, or I can call it the entrepreneurship, because nowadays we all know that in most cases, the universities are viewed as a business, especially in speaking of international education. So in speaking of the business, so the most important issues from the university are the products and the services they can provide. So to put this in the context of international education, so this can include the capacity of the development of a curriculum, and also the capacity to support students within the programs. And also the university try to attract, nowadays so I think many of you have like in the United States and in Australia, and then you're aware that so the university, when they try to attract as many students as possible, and so this sometimes is realized through lowering certain kind of requirements or standards, for example, the language requirements, and also in some cases students don't need some background knowledge to get enrolled in some programs, the study programs. So in this case, so how the universities can prepare students to achieve the level the same as other students, and in the end. So this could be a huge challenge for the universities. I think the universities, of course, they need the supporting projects, but most of the time there is no effective projects like this to give the students substantial support. So this is, in my mind, is the lack of the corporate or the entrepreneur skills when they view themselves, the university view themselves as the business. So one of the reasons I try to propose this kind of a framework is also to address the reality that the study of soft power, there is always a lack of a framework to evaluate soft power. So it is true with the theory of soft power, and it is also true with when we talk about, when we look at a study of research on the soft power in international education. So there is no way or no pathway to look at the effectiveness or to evaluate the outcome of the soft power activities or initiatives. So with this new reconfiguration of the values and the virtues and virtuosities, we can have a pathway for evaluation as shown here. For example, looking at the value transformation, and we can do the surveys on the students and also look at the rankings, looking at the academic knowledge delivery, and we can do the surveys again on the graduates and also on the employers to see if they are satisfied with the graduates. And also there are many this kind of research or the surveys nowadays conducted by the industry. So when we talk about the capacity to facilitate the student learning, about the social norms and the culture, the social values, we can look at the cultural literacy in the end of the host countries through the surveys. So in this way, this framework provides us with the opportunity to evaluate the soft power generation in international education. So since the framework can help us to evaluate the soft power in international education, and then it can help us to identify the barriers in the soft power generation through international education, especially from the international students' perspective. So for example, when we talk about the experience in the different cultures and the social values, one common comment people make is to experience the beauty of democracy, especially for students from non-democratic countries. So this is especially true in the case of Chinese students, international students. So, however, the reality we see nowadays is that the society is not necessarily welcoming this kind of engagement, given the increasing ethno-nationalist turn in public discourse over the last few years. And unfortunately, the universities have not shown any efforts or effective efforts to deal with such irrational help, but rather have been subjected to the pressure of ethno-nationalism. So this can be seen in the research conducted by a researcher at the University of Sydney several years ago. And also to address this in a curriculum, and there is no consideration of this scenario either. And for example, even in some relevant disciplines, for example, I taught a unit teaching public sphere, public policy, and communication. So in that unit, we told students that the public sphere allowed equal access for everybody for the rational social debate. So one day, after class, one student came to me, ask, so why citizens participated in this kind of social debates? Because in some societies, people do it is just out of a certain kind of self-interest purpose. So why people here in Australia are more active in public affairs? Of course, I can tell the students simply, I can tell them that it is the beauty of democracy. And also people are active in exercising their power as citizens. But is that all? And so what is the most relevant is that it seems that most of the course designers, even in units like this, we didn't realize that the majority of the students in this class from different social environments, social contexts. And so we didn't realize that they are not familiar with this kind of advantages and disadvantages of the current problems facing democracies as well. It is definitely not enough to just tell them that this is the beauty of democracy. And it seems that there is something more needed. So is it necessary for us to rethink our curriculum design, rethink if it is possible for us to fill in this gap a bit with some efforts? So this leads to another issue of advanced knowledge. So if there is such gap existing in our curriculum, so can we say that we are providing systematic academic training to international students? Then the issue of virtuosity. So it is more about the capacity to develop the kind of products catering the demand of our customers. So when we look at the international education as the business, so it is more about the corporation professionalism. And the one case I mentioned earlier about the lowered standards, if we admit students following lower standard, does it mean that we are promoting to them that we have the capacity to get them ready for the job market in the end? Then what supporting systems do we have for that, to achieve that? And nowadays, you can see that in some field, like in the departments of economics, finance, and commerce, and so where the percentage of the international students is extremely high here in Australia. So the majority of international students would seek actual help from the private tutoring businesses. I'm not sure how many of the executives in the universities are aware of this kind of a situation. I've heard that a very shocking case a few years ago at some university, and a student told me that about 70 or 60% of the class is from one single country, and more than half of them would need to seek extra tutoring service before exams. So there is a question for the universities, what the universities have done, what the universities can do. So the truth is, in most cases, there is no efficient efforts has been made. And we witnessed the cut in the last few years, the cut of the language centers in many universities to save the cost, and the decreasing of tutors' workload, et cetera, and also academics are preferring the research than teaching. So teaching has become an unpleasant burden for many. So this is alarming and tells us, how we say that we have the virtuosity to serve the international students. So in my mind, the university should have the kind of a capacity as business to do the research on student in the first place, rather than the research in the discipline. And to understand the need and the demand of our customers, and to design certain kind of materials to help the students. But in reality, there is almost nothing meaningful has been done. Of course, there is the kind of student advising services, but if you look at the amount of students seeking outside support with extra money and for the tutoring service, private tutoring service, you can see that this is a failure of many teaching activities. So this will impact the impression of the university and also of the country. So this indicates that there are spaces for improvement in the international education as a venue for soft power. Okay, so this is basically the main content of my chapter.